I'd like to talk now about men's mental health. It's something that I've been thinking about. Well, I thought about actually quite a bit a while back, and I never expressed anything. And I just thought this might be a good way to talk about it a little bit, express some things that were on my mind that may be helpful to some people. And again, this is all part of the healing process. So these videos, I spoke some about my kind of journey through chronic illness, and then recovering from chronic illness. And I may still talk a little bit about some of that. I'm totally open to doing that. I probably could make a whole video. I don't know why I just thought of it, but a whole video on the surgery that Dr. Ray did for me, even though I know I talked about it a little bit in one of my videos. But now I'm kind of transitioning into talking more about complementary treatments that I started to kind of um, take part in during the time I was chronically ill, but then continue to do and still do now that I'm well. And I consider mental health a part of that, right? Because it's a part of the whole picture. But specifically men's mental health. I don't have to tell you because most of you have seen somewhere or read or heard online all the different things being said. Everything from I'd rather run into a bear in the woods than I would a strange man. We live in a patriarchal society that I don't know what people, some people would say, or most people would say, but the word misogynistic, of course, is thrown around as well. And all of that is true. But it's not the whole truth. And that's the interesting thing. And that's where I want to kind of weigh in a little bit. Truth is such an interesting word in itself. I mean, when I work with couples and they come in and they've got different stories, well, there's truth in their stories, but it may not be the whole truth. And it's kind of the way I look at the word responsibility. In our society, like if someone does something wrong or egregious, we when emotion is involved, when things are emotionally charged, we tend to look at things in a very black and white way. Like, well, they did a crime, they need punishment, right? We need to put them in jail, and in some cases that may be true. I don't want to get off on that subject, but in my area, I look at responsibility a little differently. I look at it as first of all, I teach or try to at least share the idea that we're all responsible for our own thoughts and feelings. But when it comes to responsibility, I look at it not from a blame or guilt or shame perspective, but more of a we all share a level of responsibility. What responsibility do you have in what happened, right? So if you've got a couple that's talking about a particular issue, well, what responsibility do you have in that, in what happened? It may be 5%, it may be 50%, it may be 70%. I don't know. But we all share a level of responsibility, right? And so looking at this idea of men's mental health and all the things that have been said and that continue to be said, one of the things that I've seen that people also have said is, well, men should just be more kind, right? It's not that difficult. I would agree with that. And at the same time, I wouldn't agree with that. The culture that men grow up in is very different, even in a lot of healthy families, than how women grow up. And in not so healthy families, it is definitely different. Now, not that women don't grow up in traumatic, abusive families as well, but the idea that as a man, you can't show weakness, you shouldn't show emotions or even have emotions for that matter, except for maybe anger. That one's okay, but within a certain degree, right? And I know that that seems on some level like we hear those things as I say them. It's like, well, yeah, okay, maybe you heard that growing up, but you can change that. You can unlearn that. And it's like, well, yes, you can, or learn something new, learn something different. Yes, you can, but I learned those things as a child as well. And I'm a counselor, and I've been a counselor for years. And I talk to my clients, with this idea that feelings are just feelings. It's okay to share feelings. It's okay to be angry, right? It's how we respond to them that's the issue, right? So instead of just reacting from feelings, we can respond to our feel. We can learn to respond to our feelings differently. That's part of taking responsibility. But feelings in and of themselves are not good or bad, right? There's nothing wrong with them. So I say all of that to say that the message I got growing up was, don't have feelings. Don't feel that way. Oh, don't be sad. Oh, okay. I won't be sad then. I'm not sure what to do, but I won't be sad. I'll give you something to be angry about. Oh, now we hear those things. We see those we see examples in our lives, right? From our father, mother, etc., people in our life and the community around us. And we take all that information in. We create meaning out of all of that, right? For myself, I basically shut down. I became the good guy, the nice guy. I learned not to feel or not to even express myself, to express my thoughts. In high school, I would label myself now as chronically depressed. I remember being in a vice principal's office one time while he was talking at me for a good minute or two before I finally said, "What does it matter? We're all going to die anyway." And he just kind of looked at me for the first time and was like, "I think you need to go see a counselor," is what he said. And I was like, in my mind, I'm like, I think I knew what counseling meant, but I really didn't, right? I was like, okay. But there was no referral. There was nothing happened. I wish somebody had made me go to counseling back in middle school already, because I sure as heck needed it. Heck. Hell. I sure as hell needed it. I mean, I really did. And I think a lot of people would have benefited from counseling back in middle school when I look back, but it wasn't really available back then. Now, at least, thank God, there's more awareness around that, even though it's good and bad, because some people just also, I mean, at times overuse these labels, that are thrown around left, right, and center. But that's another issue. So going back to men's mental health, so I shared a little bit about myself, and even as a counselor now, I still have a hard time with, not a hard time, but I still am challenged a little bit with being okay with having feelings, being okay to express my thoughts and feelings, especially when they're intense, or in certain relationships. So my go-to still sometimes is to just hold it in and then process afterwards, rather than just be able to be like, you know what, that was really hurtful, or that was upsetting, or that's not okay, or I'm angry that you said that, or even being able to cry. I still find that challenging. So how does this all relate to men's mental health? Well, I guess the point is, first of all, shaming people, it never helps anyone. So just saying things like, well, men just need to be more kind is, I mean, if you say that coming from a place of kindness and love, that might be okay. But a lot of times I don't think it is or was. And so, again, if it was that easy, the world wouldn't be the way it is. I mean, it's as simple as that. It's like the Nike commercial, right? Just do it. Well, thank you. I'll get right on that. I'll just do it. So I don't have an answer here. I'm just kind of processing, talking, thinking out loud. We can't necessarily change the culture. I mean, many people would like to. Many people would like to get rid of misogyny and patriarchy, and I'm all for that. I'm all for men being allowed to express their feelings and thoughts, and to be more sensitive and vulnerable and all of that. All for it. But it's, unfortunately, I mean, unless we make a huge shift in consciousness, it's going to take time. Hopefully we'll still be around, to see that, but it's going to take some time. For me, when I'm working with people, again, I just encourage them. That's my word. I encourage them with the ideas that it's okay to have feelings. And this is definitely for men as well. Like, I've had many men come to me with, well, I've been told I have anger issues, and my first thing is, there's no such thing as anger issues. You have emotions, you experience anger. The problem isn't the anger. The problem is what you do with it, right? How you react from being angry. So you need to learn to respond to your feelings and to your anger differently, so that you can then respond to people and to situations differently, right? So that's a little harder to say, though. So it's easier to just say, well, you got anger issues. We like to make things simple sometimes, and that's a problem. We don't sometimes spend enough time. So how we process feelings is really the issue. And we really need to be teaching that to kids at an early age. I mean, ideally, I'd be out there, or there'd be groups out there pounding the pavement, teaching this to kids in elementary school. I don't know why we aren't, honestly, because that's where it needs to start. They need to be teaching mindfulness and meditation and communication skills and processing your feelings. That goes along with all the things I just said at a young age, to teach kids it's okay to have feelings. It's how we process them, and then what we do with them, right? The other, and I've kind of already touched on that. The other part of that is communication. Communication, 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 which is really my focus when I'm working with couples, is on communication. How do we talk to one another? I do this because I use my hand as a mirror, right? So I'm either mirroring you, like I hear you, I'm repeating what you're saying, or I'm saying, oh, I can see that you're upset about that, right? I'm acknowledging that you may be experiencing a certain feeling. But then when I turn the mirror on myself, I'm talking about my experience. I'm feeling angry right now. That's not okay. I didn't like it when you said that. When you did this is what that meant to me. I'm going to make a whole video on this. I think I have one somewhere, but anyway. But yeah, how we communicate, right? So all of a sudden now we've got a different tool set. So how we respond to our feelings, that's step one. And then tools, how we communicate is maybe step 2, right? So, oh my goodness, I can learn to communicate differently. I see videos sometimes, and I saw this really smart fellow, young kid. I need to call him out, not in a bad way, but I need to message him next time I see one of his videos. He was talking to this fellow. He's okay. I'm just going to say he's a Democrat. He was talking to a Republican, a MAGA, and the guy was getting really mad, and he was like, "Oh, you're just spewing facts," and the guy's laughing. Well, yeah, because I'm smart, because I've got these facts. I've read stuff, right? I've read shit. And the guy's like, it's just facts. That doesn't mean you're smart. Anyway, they're going back and forth. And it's like, I get what they were both saying, and I get what the kid was trying to say. No, it's important to educate yourself, right? And I'm with him on that. But the part that I don't like is I don't like shaming people. That never helps anybody, and it doesn't help get your message across. But I also understand why that guy was getting angry. I've seen this happen in my practice. I've seen it happen with couples I've worked with, and I'll give you one example. There was a fellow. He was overwhelmed. He was there with his wife. He's overwhelmed with work. She works as well, but maybe not as much. So she has more of the responsibilities at home with their kid. But he was overwhelmed with work, and then also with the responsibilities of being at home. But he didn't know how to say all this. And so at one point, he was just kind of like, he looked like he wanted to cry. He looked like he wanted to kind of blow up. I'm not sure which. Either he was going to cry or he was going to blow up in anger. And she was kind of processing her own stuff. And I was just like, let's just stop right now. I stopped her because I wanted to acknowledge what was going on with him. And I was like, you're really struggling. Like, this is a lot for you. And you don't know what to do with it. And you don't know how to express it because you were never given the opportunity to learn that when you were a child. And that's part of the problem too. I know that's another thing I'm saying now is if we don't learn these skills as children, they're not so easy to learn as adults, even though they're easy, right? Like this thing right here, this mirroring thing seems really simple. I can see that you're really sad about that. Oh, that's really upsetting to you. You're starting to get angry. You don't like it when I blah, 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 stuff like that. Or I'm starting to feel angry. I might need to take a few minutes to process this before I can continue talking about it. Right? So mirroring, simple tool, but it's not so simple to just pick it up like that. It takes practice because we learn to react. There's that word again, right? Rather than respond, we learn to react. We feel something and boom. So going back to this conversation, well, okay, I think I finished with the couple. So I acknowledged what was going on with him. And it was like I could see this relief in him, but I also could see that she was like, oh, wow, okay. I wasn't seeing that, right? And she didn't see that because she was in her own stuff. And it's hard sometimes, right? Because it's easy to get up to here in our own stuff. And then it's hard. And then we start to react. That's the problem. Especially now I've gotten into couples counseling here, which I didn't want to do, but yeah. So going back to this conversation with these two guys, I understand why the guy was getting angry, or at least this is my theory on it. Because as a child, he was not allowed to or given permission to express his feelings and to express his thoughts in a loving, accepting environment. Or maybe his parents, when they got upset and angry, they mirrored, yelling at each other. So that's what he saw growing up. Conflict was people yelling at each other. And he never learned, again, to be able to express his thoughts and feelings in a loving and accepting environment. So what does he do when he gets emotionally charged? His voice starts to get louder, and he starts to just get mad. And he's like, well, you're just being stupid. You're just spewing facts. That doesn't mean you're smart. Idiot. And then we go, well, that's not an argument. That's just, you're just getting mad and just throwing out, now you're just name calling. Yeah, because he doesn't know what else to do. He was never given permission to do anything different. I'm not excusing it. None of this, by the way. I should have done a whatever that is at the beginning of this video. I'm not saying in any of this that it's okay, you know, for anybody, men, women, whatever ethnicity, race, or whatever you are, to be an idiot. You know, be hateful, to be racist, to yell at people, to be misogynistic, right? No, we need more of the gentleness and softness and kindness and all of these things. That's part of the point in all of this. But the other part is just to say that the culture that men grow up in oftentimes sucks. And so I'm not even saying that being kind to them is going to be helpful. It may, for some, it may have been nice if the kid had said to the guy, well, he's not a kid, he's probably in his early 20s or something, I don't know. If he would have said to the guy, I get that you're really angry. I get it. I don't want to argue with you. You know, if he would have just acknowledged what the guy was feeling, right? I get that you're angry about this. You know, you're passionate about what you want to say. You know, I want to acknowledge that. I'm not here to argue with you. We're just trying to find our way through this difficult subject, and and hopefully find some common ground, or be able to talk about it at least. Even if we disagree on everything. Well, usually you don't disagree on everything, but anyway, right? So. But that didn't happen because the guy stuck to his guns. You're just being stupid. And the kid was like, well, I'm just really smart, because I read. And it's like, well, yeah, whatever. Conflict, and I'm going to leave it at this. Conflict does not have to be getting mad. Conflict does not have to be people yelling. But if that's all you saw growing up, and if you didn't experience, or if you weren't given the opportunity to share your thoughts and feelings growing up, then that's unfortunately all you know. And someone has to show you differently. Otherwise, you don't know. So that hopefully made some sense. And everything I said doesn't just relate to men, but part of my focus was, again, on male culture and on how men grow up, and on just to recognize that, because it's part of a bigger problem. Obviously, I don't have to say that. Here I am in the United States, where patriarchy and misogyny is a big problem. It is all over the world, to different degrees. So yeah, creating an environment where we can take responsibility in a positive way, right? Oh yeah. Instead of just reacting from feelings, learning to respond to our own feelings, and then learning to communicate them, and communicate our thoughts and our feelings. A couple things, that I talked about, and again, ideally, teaching children this in elementary school. I'll finish this by saying one thing. I worked at the Denton County Juvenile Detention Center for about 6 months years ago. And while I was there, they had a program. I forget what it was called, but they had a program for kids that were there for a period of 6 months or more. And they offered individual counseling, family counseling, etc. But one of the things they also offered was a life skills class. And I thought, man, a life skills class, why aren't they teaching that in school? That should be mandatory, right? Because not all kids are learning this at home. Now, I'm sure there'd be parents that would not want that to be the case, and people that are going to be upset about it, and all the things, and that may be true, but I think it would be helpful. So that's the end of this video, period, pause, and who knows what I'll say next time. But thanks for listening. I'll see you next time. Okay, bye-bye.